Hello everybody! Happy Wednesday! It's time to do some Cinema 4D and some 3D and some motion graphics and maybe some special effects. Who knows? How's everybody doing? Who do we got hanging out already? Do we have everything working? Turn that audio off, turn this on. I've got Twitch, I got YouTube up. We've got David and Ivan and Michelangelo over on YouTube already, just starting. And we got Sage and Prism, Tom, Clarky, what's going on? Jonathan, Winbush is here. Welcome, welcome, man. Dean, Zach, Pro Tools, Paul, Stellar, Sphere Factory, Pierre, Paul, Tobias, Mumphies, Mr. Matt Dog, Polytex, Sid. How's it going, everybody? Welcome, welcome. Let's see. I just ate some questionable soup for lunch. It was tasting, I know, it was turning my stomach, so I stopped eating halfway through. So I'm hoping I don't get food poisoning. I don't think I've ever gotten food poisoning, really. That's not true. I got really sick after eating one meal, but whatever. I'm feeling pretty good, so we'll see how that goes. Oh, we got more people on YouTube popping in. Dassoman, Anchor Feet, Jamie, X-List, welcome, welcome. Dave, hi everybody. Oh, Reza12. Hello everybody, thanks for coming and hanging out. Let me think. Is there anything to announce or cover? It's been a pretty standard week. I can't talk or show anything off quite yet, but we did launch the beta for the next Rocket Lasso tool that's going to be coming out, hopefully sooner than later, as long as everything goes well. We are in the process of seeing if we can get multi-threaded as well, which could be good, just for the stuff it's going to be doing. But yeah, no more hints about that. I did just release a tutorial. Let me see if I can pull up a new tutorial easily enough. Pop open a new YouTube window. Copy that. Open it in Chrome where it doesn't loop. And switch the screen. Boop, bink. Yeah. So yeah, here's a new video or a new tutorial that I just released today. Well, it was released a week ago on Patreon, but I think it's really cool. The stuff that we cover. I think there's a little preview animation in the beginning. Let me go super fast. It's muted. No, that goes right into it. Yeah, the preview's in there somewhere. But whatever, I'll scrub to the end. We end up making this poster, and this poster was made by Tobias in the chat from the Rocket Lasso challenges, but it's all about like peeling like wallpaper away or spooky stuff. In fact, this was actually inspired from a question from a couple weeks ago during Rocket Lasso Live. So there's some pretty cool effects in here. We're able to combine it. It's not, yeah, there we go. So you can see it pulling up forward and backward. So I think it works really well. There's a lot of opportunity, and even though the tutorial is exactly an hour long, it's really like the first 20 minutes is like the meaty part of it. Even less than that, and then we get fancier and fancier and fancier. But there's a lot of really, really good techniques. I actually extracted a couple of little mini segments from it that I'm gonna be posting on like Twitter and whatnot. There's just COVID stuff. Anyway, let's start doing questions. I don't have much else to chat about. Let's see what everybody's talking about. Okay, start getting those questions together. Quick overview of the rules. I need to see the artist or studio who made it. Make sure you call out the specific effect. On YouTube, you got to type out the question. You can't put a link, but if you go onto Twitch, you can do a link if you were so inclined. But in any other case, let's just see what we've got. Can we model some dubious soup? That's funny. How many, Sid's asking how many screens I have. I have 2 monitors. And then sometimes if I'm going like super hardcore, I'll put my iPad in between the 2 screens, and that can be playing a video or controlling music. So I just kind of have that little bit of extra space, but I just have 2 monitors here. It's actually a bit of a pain to, when I'm doing the live stream, the camera goes right in between the 2 monitors. So I have to push one way up to the left, one way up to the right. Otherwise the camera is like way too high of an angle. But yeah, I think we are good to go. RBLX is asking about creating like smoke or physic. I'm not sure what you mean by physic and smoke digital assets. I think, well, I have tinkered around with making, just using the volume builder to make clouds and stuff in Redshift, which I kind of sort of know how to do, but besides that, it's not something I'm an expert in. But yeah, and Dave is even saying smoke is best with third-party tools like Turbulence FD, which I completely agree with. And you also got some pretty good fire and smoke sim with X particles. I don't currently have that installed, so Pyrocluster is Pyrocluster in C4D. Is that? Yeah, I don't even remember. Is that? Yeah, Pyrocluster. That's so old school. It's so slow. I think it's single-threaded for one. Let me get the screen up. Sorry. Okay. So yeah, we got lots of questions coming in. Is it possible to offset the animation of an Alembic object in a cloner? Whoa, that's a specific question. I seriously don't know. That's a fine little question. Let's find out together. So this shouldn't take too long. I just need to create some sort of animation and then export it to Alembic. And you're asking if it's possible to offset the animation. Oh, I just have a message from Xfinity, which is Comcast, and they just said I used 100% of my allotted internet for the month. So, yay, I get charged more now. Anyway, let's keep it as simple as possible. I will make a figure, and I'll copy and paste the figure, and this one, I will keyframe the position, go 90 frames, and we'll just pull it out like that. And then create a volume builder, volume mesher, put both figures in. Inside the volume builder, I will create a dilate and erode, which will inflate it a bit. And yeah, we can inflate that a bit. Crank up the settings, just get a couple extra polygons. Nothing fancy. You just see I've got a blob that we should be able to clearly see is transitioning from one spot to another. I'll just make that linear. Select the keyframes. Spline, linear. Okay, now we'll export it as Alembic. Well, let me see. Is it possible to offset the animation, the Alembic objects? So let's try and right-click and do a bake as Alembic here. So that makes the local one. It wants to be saved. It's going to be really hard to navigate. Hang on, I'm going to move this to the other screen just so I don't show spoilers from plugins and stuff. Where am I looking for? I'm looking for this episode. This shouldn't be too big of a file. Rocket Lasso, live shows. I hate when this interface pops up. Like, just give me the regular Windows interface, please. Season 3, episodes, episode 8, episode scene files. Okay. Okay, that all gets exported, and now we should be able to turn all that off, and I should have a standalone file. And because of the way we exported that, this is essentially a OBJ sequence, well, the equivalent of like an OBJ sequence, where it's just completely keyframing every point, every single polygon is being completely recreated every time because they're constantly changing. So now that that has been exported, and I mean, you could export it as well. This should be essentially the exact same thing if you do it one way or the other. Now you're saying, could you offset it? And yes, here's the offset, and I should be able to just say, hey, okay, start at frame 25. And nothing should happen until frame 25, and then you see it begins to move. We've got playback speed. So if I crank this up really fast, and it should start at frame 25, go 500% of the speed. If we lower the speed down, I'm going to go really extreme. I imagine it's going to start looking stop motion-y because it can't tween between them. Yeah, you see how it's like pop, 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 pop. If this was an animation that had the exact same point count and poly count, let's say this was a character mesh and it wasn't like, if it's just deforming, then this would probably be able to blend between them. But because it is constantly resetting the geometry, you can't tween between that. So you could speed up and it will work, but you can't slow down, and you can offset. And then you can even, well, there's loop and playback, but if you turn off use animation, then you actually just have the control over this however you want to. So this could be any kind of motion in and out, and you can keyframe that to do whatever kind of speed you want. So yeah, you can totally offset Alembic things. Okay, that was a little mini one. Let's see if there's anything else along these lines. There's Embergen, blah, 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 at the sea. Oh, yeah, you said in a cloner. I forgot. I almost skipped the actual part of the question, which is, can we put this in a cloner? Now, that's a fine question. Now that I exported it like this, That's a fine question. We'll do a grid of 1 like that. And I'll do 2 more. And not quite as much spacing. Okay, we should be able to easily see these now. Now, if I hit play, nothing should happen because I currently am in frame 0. If I say use animation, hopefully we'll see it begin to play. Yes, it is now playing. And we'll go back to regular speed. So we're seeing the regular speed. Now, the question being, can it be offset inside the cloner? Now, I wonder if we can. I have a hope that we can. Right now, I bet you we can't do it, because if I say cloner, we'll do a step, and I don't want to step the scale. I want to step the time, so I'll just modify the time like this. And I bet you that they all continue to look identical. Yeah, you see they're still doing the exact same thing, because the cloner is only looking for actual keyframes. But if we go into this object and say, don't use the animation, I have a hope that it can see this if we keyframe it. So let's set our keyframes to linear. So Control or Command D, go to key interpolation, set this to linear. And now when I'm at the time of 0, I'd like this to be frame 0. And now when at the time of 90, I would like this to be 90. And the hope is now when I tell this step effector to have an effect, let's see. Well, I'm not seeing anything yet. That's kind of visually odd. Did I keyframe that properly? 90. Let me pull that out. Okay, I didn't keyframe that properly. Give me a second. 0. 90. I must have not changed the time. That's my fault. Put that back into the cloner. Okay, now we hit play. And there we go. Now we can offset the time, because yeah, the cloner can only see keyframes. That's why back at GSG we made signal, and signal couldn't be seen by cloner because cloners by definition only look for keyframes. So now that we've converted this to a keyframe that's behaving exactly as if use animation was on, it can actually see that keyframe and offset each of them in time. So yeah, there we go. Now we can offset them however we want. That's the step effector, but you know, I could peak that in the center point, and now the middle one is going to be behind and the outer ones will be matching, and we can combine that however we want. So yeah, you can totally offset those by keyframing it. So hopefully that answers that question properly. And let's save the scene file just in case anyone is interested. Alembic offset cloner. Alrighty, yeah, good question. I'm glad I glanced back at the chat to remember what the actual goal was. Okay, let's go check Twitch. There's a bunch of links that came in. There's something, how to wrap something in plastic, a new piece by Matt Taylor. Could you create this without using Sims? Cloth animation. I want to see the wrapping in plastic question. Let's see what we've got here. Oh, interesting. So this is from L Motion Lab. And let's see what we have. Cute. Oh, that is absolutely adorable. Yeah, so wrapping up, in this case, an eggplant, but that looks pretty neat. I'll pull that back over there. Okay, so the actual wrapping of that, well, let me think if I even have a good methodology for this, because they don't say in the description at all what they did. And let me think of, That is trickier than you might think it would be. My assumption is that it is not dynamically getting applied. It's possible it's getting dynamically applied. But cloth is not great at reacting with connectors, and the length of the cloth we would need to do there would be pretty prohibitive. That would be the most logically straightforward way of doing it. Having said that, here's a thought. And I actually did this the other day for a completely unrelated reason. But let me show you a thought right now. So here's a helix that I've laid flat on the ground. And now, I guess to show kind of the eggplant shape, I'm going to unwrap this just a little bit like that. And we can spiral this around more times if we wanted to. But let's just do that. And now, copy and paste this helix. And I want it to be a straight line. So I'm going to say no end angle. And we'll get rid of the radius. And now I should be left with... Oh, we need a height, sorry. Yeah, so now I've got this as a straight line, and it's got 100 subdivisions. I want no intermediate points. So now we've got this secondary straight line. If I were to create a spline wrap and drop that as a child of the helix, and say I want this to map onto y plus, because that's the direction of that spline. The spline I want to wrap onto is this helix, then... Well, we should, now you see that's disappeared, and it should be wrapped around down here. I will hide the original one, and now you can see that this new spline is spinning around on this one. So we are mapping one spline to another. They're completely unrelated. If I say, okay, spline wrap, I don't want you to fit, I don't want you to stretch it to match. I would like it to keep the original length of the object. You now see that we only see part of that helix spinning around. So if I were to decrease the length, you can see I can decrease this going all the way back to here, but I could increase it, and as I increase the length of that, it will spiral around, and then eventually when it hits this end point, it's actually just going to overshoot. It will continue from that point. So do you kind of see the concept that I'm looking at there? If this were to be the case, that if we wrap one spline around another, we can offset it. Now, can we offset it? That's not something I think I've ever specifically done. Like, okay, yeah, you see, okay, so here's a thought, is if I take the strength, and we can even push it, oh, okay, apparently pushing beyond, oh, I want offset, not strength. So I can overshoot that, and now if I start pulling this in, it will spiral around and around, and now if we go too far, it's going to shoot out the other side. But there is potential, if we set the spline up properly, that we could get it to spiral around with a single keyframe. Now, the bigger trick being... It's kind of like we need this spiral to, oh, it needs to start on the tight end and then spiral out. I feel like conceptually it's almost like backwards. Because let's say we were wrapping this around an object, like, yeah, that would spiral around, but we're spiraling around at its widest here. And then as we continue, that will keep on getting tighter. It'll get tighter and tighter as it goes around. So how do you wrap? So it's like, okay, let's imagine we're coming in from this end. So we start in from the tight one, and then as it wraps, it's actually becoming, it's overlapping on the outside, but we need the line to be coming in from the outside. Am I thinking about this correctly? Correctly in thinking that this is a limitation and that maybe this process doesn't work. And just to throw it out there, the extended idea here would be making two of these, and they could be offset. But for now, I'll just make an instance. Instance, please. And visually hide the spline wrap. Instance, offset, in space. Oh, it doesn't let me offset in space. I'd have to instance the entire thing. But I'll just do it manually right now. So if I were to move, oh yeah, it needs both copies. So I'll grab that, copy, paste. So we've got double duplicates. And if I were to pull that up in the air now, you can imagine a loft between these, between that and that. And now those would interlink with each other, increasing the count. And now if I were to grab both spline wraps and change them simultaneously, you can see how I'm kind of getting this wrapping animation. Now the reason I made two different splines is we have the potential of changing one or the other. So this reference spline could be a different radius. You can see I can make that wider, but of course as I make it wider, it makes it longer, which is now offsetting the loft, and it's going to pass through itself. There's a lot of variables to move around here. But we're just experimenting with that. So yeah, that's kind of an idea, but that I don't think this is a valid approach. I think it's neat. It's a cool thing to do. And I'll undo that a bit, and I'll save the scene file just in case anybody is interested in it. But let's explore a completely different approach. Helix wrap. Let me think. Like I said, we could just straight up try and do it with simulation, but that could get really fussy. But it's conceptually the most straightforward. This was the next most straightforward I'd been thinking about. What is the third? Because here we have to take a balance of like how many iterations we would take, and simulating would mean we need to let it process. We have to do a lot of takes on it, and that's not good for a live stream. And it wouldn't even be... There's an idea. That would be weird. Would that work? Maybe. That's weird, but... And the way it unwraps at the end... Yeah, the simulation... The more I think about it, the more I'm like, ooh, that's not a good idea to try it that way. Now I was also thinking of the idea of creating a null to do the motion to travel around and then trace it. Because then that could be tracing. Potentially we could connect something at the end and animate it separately. Man, it's a super tricky one. Yeah, crossfader. This doesn't have to be exact, and anybody who's showing up, this is kind of what we're thinking about. It doesn't need to be exact, but I'm just kind of conceptually trying to think about what I would want to do with it. Let's also keep in mind that I might be putting a higher standard on here than we necessarily need to, because there could be a big fake in this. I don't know, but keep in mind, look at the framing that we have here. This line just goes behind the object. So that could be a completely unrelated mesh. And then the stuff spiraling around here, just traveling upward, that could be a secondary mesh. The whole thing does spiral, but that's got nothing to do with seeing this. So that's all I'm saying is keep in mind those two things could be separate. And then that last one does wrap around the other way, but that could work. And then the entire thing blast off. I was going to see if it like pinched because it's got these cylinders here, but the entire thing moves up into the air. This is I like this one because it's really tricky. You can't Sid, you can't do spline dynamics and a tracer. You can't do spline dynamics on a tracer because it's changing a point count, and nothing in cinema, dynamically speaking, likes changing point count. If you change the point count, the entire simulation resets. I mean, I super want to tackle this because I think it's cool. It's a good example for problem solving, but I'm not getting like a really good vibe. And it's no matter what it is, it's going to be a very meticulous rig. So we can't just start and then hope we get a good finish. We have to have the proper concept in the beginning or it won't work. Me traveling upward. The way that those lofts were arguing with each other makes me worried. Let me, completely unrelated rig, but just out of curiosity, let's make a cylinder by itself is kind of boring, but I guess we'll just start with a cylinder so we can see it very clearly. A thought, and I don't know if this would work at all, but let's give it a quick experiment. If I were to make a null, we'll just call this one rot for rotation. And we make a second null, and that null becomes a child of this one. I'll scoot that null out to whatever degree. And then we'll call that A. And now rotation will spin like this. So if we were to say, okay, keyframe, fast forward to the end, and we'll spin, we'll keep it simple, 720. So double spin. It'll accelerate and decelerate. But now you can see that we're going to spin around, and that null is now going to travel around the outside. So if we make a tracer, we can trace the letter, or we can trace the null A, and you'll now see that it'll generate a line spinning around. So, that's all good. But where it can start getting a little bit interesting is we have the ability to then keyframe things. I can take this rotational one and move it down to the bottom. We say, okay, you're going to start down there, but as this plays, I'll also keyframe. I kind of want to separate them all out, so I will make another null. I'll just name this Y, and I want to zero that out. 0 and 0. Okay, so now you see I have 3 nulls, and this one I'll just keyframe on Y. So on Y, keyframe, go to the end, and travel this up, not all the way up, but most of the way up. And now you should hopefully see that this will create a spiral traveling around. We now have a proper spiraling spline. So that is nifty. If we create another null, so again, creating another null, put that as a child of Y, click the reset PSR button, and then call this one Z, and I'll put A inside of Z. And the point of this one is I can give it some additional motion traveling outward, and we'll do that. So I kind of like A to be zeroed out. And I should have had Z, but so now we'll just move Z out. So I'm going to start it very close. You see it's really close to the surface. So keyframe that as the start, and then at the end of the animation, I want that to have also traveled out on Z. And separating these out into separate objects just makes it really easy for us to see it clearly in the timeline and also manipulate these keyframes independently of each other. And I can select a single one and change that one variable. Now, why don't we, and let me even show you that right now. If I want this to go out further, so I can just select that keyframe and I can just change the number. So I can say 75 and you'll see that will just update. If there were 2 keyframes, this would be grayed out and we couldn't change any given one. But now you'll see that this will create a spiral that goes around the outside. So it goes around and it expands outward. Now I intentionally exaggerated it a bit more. So if we were to make a second one of these, and let's make another null, and I'm going to put these in here, and we'll just call this lower, and then copy paste the entire rig, call this one upper. Then I can take the entire upper rig and move it up into the air. Actually, we don't go too far off, so just scoot it up a bit. Now we should get 2 nearly identical spirals offset from each other. And with those both being traced, I suppose I'll have to yank those out of the rig, but let's make that loft again. So those will spiral around. Let's chill that out by adding a bunch more segments. So you can see that that will twirl around and be wrapping and wrapping up the surface. That's all good. Now, let's take upper and push it up further. So that one, it should be bigger overall now. So you get this bigger wrap. And you see how this actually will sort of look like it's wrapping around the outside a bit more. So let's take both of them and lower them both down. So that's wrapping, wrapping, wrapping. So that's working nicely and fairly controllably. Now, technically, now that I think about it, I keyframed those to spiral around, but really we kind of want the opposite. We want them to be static. We want them not to spin, and we want the object to spin, because from our POV of the camera, we don't want it to spin. So I'm going to kill off the rotational keyframes. And then how do we... They will spin. Let me undo that for a second. I got to wrap my head around this. Those are currently spinning. We could take the resulting. Yeah, I guess we want the tracers to spin. It's really weird, but let's do that. We'll kill off those keyframes. Now these will just be traveling upward. Yeah, it's going to look a little bit weird, but those will travel upward. And then we take these 2 tracers and we spin them, which is weird, but that's what we're going to do. So let's keyframe that and then go all the way to the end and spin these around 720. And now it is a really weird thing, but yeah, look now. Those are spinning around. And we get a similar end result. Actually, it's wrapping on the bottom now. Man, there's a lot of very, very specific details here. The goal, or one of the points of this one, is you see this line is, I guess we actually want to move up instead of down, but you see how this line is kind of not moving? It's kind of static. It's not traveling left and right. So yeah, we need to rearrange a bunch of the rig to be able to make that spiral more properly. But you can see how that could build a spiral around. Although even that, it's not quite there. Man, there's really something cool here. I'm intrigued by it, but we're getting lost in the weeds here. There's a lot of really specific noodly things, and the layering up. I feel like I won't be able to explain it well enough unless I have a big practiced version of this. So, unfortunately, I don't have a great setup, a great way of explaining my thought here. There is going to be a proper combination, but we go forward, go back, go forward, go back, go forward, go back. A thought, and I'm not going to pursue it, but a thought would be almost like getting to the end state and then erasing it out, like build it in reverse where you kind of know where everything ends up. And that could give you a lot of potential. Because one of the tricky things here is that we're having to think of everything kind of reversed, and that would prevent us from thinking of it in reverse. I don't know. I really like the question. It's something I'll think about, but I don't think we can really pursue it any further because I'll end up spending the next hour and a half just making things marginally better and better and better. I have to really just think about it more. Anchor feet. I mean, conceptually, that's kind of what we're doing. I just wasn't using a sweep. I was using 2 tracers, but we could just use a sweep on that. Let's see. Other people have suggestions there, but we're just going to move on from this one for now, and I'm going to tackle some other things. So I saw some people chatting about this one. Tyrone has a link. Mute the tab just in case. Let's see what we've got here. This is from MT. I know we've seen work from them before, and that just means they make good stuff. Whoa, look at that. Strange. That's cool. Phew. I wonder if there's a trick anywhere here, or just staring at it. It's really cool. Is there an optical illusion at some point here where it's kind of like popping from one side to the other? I almost feel like no, it's not. There's not there. I don't know for sure, but my thought is if we were able to figure out this helix shape, that we kind of get this wheel for free. Like the wheel is not the hard part. This spiral helixy thing is. I feel like there's a very I don't even know how I would. Whatever we make is going to have to be like very kind of mathematically sound, like very clean. And I am not confident in our ability to do that here. Like, I don't know what the basis is. There's probably some really specific math where, and it's even hard to see on any given frame. I guess I can pause it, but where does it look most circular? Like kind of here, it looks kind of circular. But how is it doing that? I'm not worried about those rails. Because there's the level that, that we can take these and just offset them in space. but needs to spiral around and then reconnect, right? Yeah, essentially we're getting that one extra spiral, but it needs to be something that we can constantly spin, infinitely spin, and even that's like a separate rig. You're hitting me with tricky ones today. These are not easy to... These are not easy to tackle. What's even this, how do we get this spiral working properly? I'm going to try one thing, but this might be another one that we can't super tackle. But if we were to make a helix, I'm going to set that helix to 360. Oops, wrong number. 360. Okay, so that spirals around one time. And then if I feed that through so spline wrap, and then tell it to along Z wrap around the circle, then we get that crazy shape. Now, is that what we're looking for? Or something like that in the proper angle? Let's try spinning around one more time. No. That gives us a crazier shape. Maybe it's only like 90. It can't be 90 degrees because then it won't loop. This is a shape that loops. Do you see how if I look at this from the proper angle, it's almost like we get the double spiral? So that's what I was thinking. But it's not what we're looking for. And if that did work, then I think we could use the it didn't work, but if that worked, then we could use the banking property. Yeah, you can see I could use this to spiral it. So we constantly get this infinite loop and we can just twist it around, which is pretty cool. You'll be able to see that better if I spiral this a couple more times. You know, this might look better if the helix was smaller. With the smaller helix, I just want to make sure that that doesn't fix things for us. No, that super doesn't fix things for us. What if we made it way bigger? Because it still spirals. Yeah, well, I think that does give us a bigger spiral. So larger size lines them up. Well, okay, so as I make it larger, it is getting closer to the shape overall. If I offset this, let's say negative 25%, then now you can see I kind of get the spiral. Depending on the perspective and the angle, there's a lot that could potentially happen there. But you do get the spiral. And then, as I was saying, we have this banking property. Now, I want to show you what the banking property is doing. So in order to do that, I'm going to, let's make this a lot smaller. We're probably going to come back to this. So I will save this. Okay, if I drop this down smaller and we spin it around a bunch of times, then now you can see how we've got this. Essentially, it looks like a spring. It looks like a spring spiraling around. And if I start cranking up this banking, then it's just going to make it spin. Actually, it's... Oh, that's so weird. Okay, do you see as I increase this, it looks like it's just turning. It's just spinning around. But what's funny is it's not traveling around the circle. We've got the circle there. This is not traveling around the circle as I increase this. It is spinning. But because it's a helix, it's making it look like it's traveling one way or the other. What's a way I can show this? Can I put a cube in there as well? Yeah. So if I, let's see, help me show this cube. Okay, yeah. So you see this cube right there? No. There we go. Okay, you see this cube. Watch as I take this and I say spiral. As I spin around, you see that the entire thing is just spinning like that. But it gives the illusion of traveling around, which is really pretty funky. But yeah, that's all it's doing. The entire thing is doing this. Just to show you, I could take a copy. The Helix travels on X, on Z. Yeah, there we go. So you can see I could do that. And we can make as many of those as we wanted to. And yeah, it's just spiraling like that. But it makes it look like it's moving. I mean, that's the nature of a spring or a helix. So I'm going to revert. And now we're back to here. Now we get this spiral. And the idea would be if we spin this, then we should sort of get that motion, maybe. My hope was that that would be creating the twisting around. Right now it just looks like it's rotating around. Let's try putting a rail on it and see if we get anything from it. I'm waiting for this to dead end any second. I actually didn't expect to get this far. But if we did put a rail on that, that should give us a little bit of dimension. Not sure. I think there's a way of making those two link up at the end, and we might need to give this a little bit of rotational strength. But right now they're not meeting up. We'll deal with that in a little bit. But as I spiral this, let's see what happens. Yeah, you see there's a lot more like complexity. As soon as I put those in there, you can actually feel those rails kind of twisting around each other. So that's a thought. We also get this, there's a gimbal lock problem happening right there. It's possible that if we gave it some sort of vector or a linear, that could help. Oh dear. Oh. Here's this one I want to. No, that also does it. That's spinning it around more. Not what I expected. What axis are we on? Z, X, Y, Z. Try and give it a Z vector. Does that stabilize it? No, we still get that gimbal lock flip. I don't want that flip to happen. There might be a way to stop it from happening. But even, I mean, now, this is already kind of a cute optical illusion to a degree. It's like, oh yeah, that's kind of crazy looking. It's not quite what we need. There's other potential layers to it. Yeah, you got that movement. I don't think that's much of anything. We've got the size. That won't do anything. This banking is the main one to give this like this twisting motion. Oh, that pop right there really bugs me. I'm trying to think of any way that we could potentially get around that. That's a Y. Yeah, no, that still gives us the gimbal. Give us one on that. I'm just trying every angle. Oh, that one. I didn't think X. Oh, no, it's still there. Dang it. It's really shallow, but it's still right there on X. And then this rotation doesn't do what I thought it would do. If I do spin around like that, does it stop it from flipping? No, it still flips. We still get the flip. Yeah. And then even with all that sort of doing its thing, I don't know that we could roll the wagon wheel around it. Because, yeah, you just essentially you see we've got like a twisted circle is the end result of what we've got here. But clearly there's different widths happening at various times. So I'm still not confident that this is actually the technique for making this happen. And who knows, maybe there's some fakery on it, but yeah, Zach, I'm not sure. I was thinking about if it was possible to make a rail spline, and I don't know that we can. Maybe we could make a rail spline if we make it larger. That might work. So let's make a duplicate of that. I want this to not affect the scale. It's going to look really funky until I increase the radius. Okay, so that is going to give it like a definitive orientation. Turn this off and you can see that I've got two splines, but both of them are following the same circle, and they're getting offset by having a larger radius, not by being offset via the spline wrap. So with that there, that might stabilize it. Yeah, in my head I was thinking that we might not be able to, but yeah, there you go. Okay, they are now stabilized. I was thinking I'd have to just offset them on X, Y, or Z, but we didn't have to. We could increase the radius, which then did introduce the stability. And now you see these two are closer to lining up. That might need some fixing. Now, having done that, like I feel like we're getting a pretty good, like there is kind of that twisting rail to a degree. I don't know that that's actually what was done, but it's kind of working. But then how do we make the wheel stick to this? Because the basic idea being, what's the best way to do this? I will create a null, a inside of a extrude. Drop that in the null, extrude on Z. Give me a bunch of length on there. Crank this up to 24. T for scale. All right. Now, if I take this and align it, let's put a align to spline. Yeah, I'll do align to spline. Align the spline. I would like it to be on this one. That should snap it to some point along the rail. Is that the original? Why is it in the middle of nowhere? Oh, it's not seeing the deformed version. Let me try putting this into a connect. Blink. And then put this one into a connect. Blink. And now align that to the connector version. Still not seeing. It's not even moving. It's not acknowledging it as a spline. So then we go to a spline mask and say, yes, it is a spline. Your spline. And now we say, okay. Now you align to that. Oh, it still didn't move. What the? Hey. Isn't that odd? Let me think. Yeah, it's being a bit of a pain. I'm going to simplify. And I don't know if this will work, but a forceps kind of thing is, let's take this helix and then put it into a tracer and say connect all elements, hide the original. Okay, so this is now visually that tracer that becomes the spline. And I don't, maybe it will animate when I do this. So let me see if it does update. Yeah, it updates. So now that's a completely independent spline. That should calculate after everything. I'll move this down and say that that should view the tracer, and now it actually does jump to it. So the, yeah, now you see it is actually aligned. Okay, so then I'll make another null. And we don't need to see this tracer, but I am going to need a second tracer, and this one will be on the second helix. Rename this rail. Name this one path. This tracer will also be rail. This one will be path. And this null actually goes before this one, and this one will also align to spline. I don't know exactly where. Let's put this on 0, and probably not correct, but let's do it on 180. And then this will now also get a simulation, no, rigging constraint aim. I wanted to aim at this previous null. Boop. So first it should place it, then it should aim it, and now it's aiming at its counterpoint, which is where? Over here. That's really far away. But let's just begin by, oh, I can't, oh, we don't know how we want this. What's isn't there a shortcut so we can keep these two offset from each other? Not that. Not that. Yeah, I don't know what the shortcut is. Let me think. I guess we'll just use some espresso. I would like this position expression set driver to drive this position. Actually, yeah, it's kind of the opposite, but that's fine. We'll do it this way. Animation or expression set driven absolute. Run, go into the espresso. Open this up, and I'm going to say that I actually want this to. I'm going to pull out this range mapper. I would like those to kind of be one-to-one, except we need math. I would like to take whatever this number is and add some number to it. And the number I want is actually going to be, and I've never figured out a way to get around this. If anybody knows, let me know. But I want a percentage I can type in, but I can't type in a percentage. There's no variable for typing in a degree. So if we change the range mapper to be a degree and a degree, then I can say, okay, I want you to output 180. So that just becomes, I just usually put all of them in there. It's like, okay, that's outputting 180. So now I'm going to say, hey, add on 180. So now the idea is that whatever I offset, we'll need to keep this up. Give me a moment. I just lost all my chat. There we go. Okay. Whenever I change this number, it's going to change the other one. So you'll see as I increase this that it'll spiral around. Now one is aiming at the next one, but that doesn't mean it's getting aligned to any kind of reasonable path. So we need to figure out the offset, and even if there is such a thing, because there might not be. So I thought that offsetting 180 would be a good place to do it. Is that not? Let me see. Let me make sure this is working. No, that's not working. Oh, it's position. Oh, I'm doing position, which means I just want a percentage. My bad. All that math stuff I didn't need is just 0.5. Okay, so that's 0.5 offset. And then you can see the distance that that wants to travel. So I can now increase my offset until it was connecting. And let's see if there's any coherence between those two. And no, not even a little bit. So the question here is, I don't even know if that is the relevant variable, because then we need these two. We need to like spin those. And actually our Helix isn't moving with it. It looks like I'm going to have to be hitting play. It's not going to all run at the same time. So let's just keyframe it. The tracers aren't refreshing. So we need to keyframe these. This would be a good use for signal, but let's keep this with no plugins. So I will keyframe. I want these to be linear. So I will keyframe, fast forward to the end and say 360, keyframe. And then now if we hit play, how does this keep on happening? Did I do that wrong? It's possible I'm doing this wrong, but did I not go fast forward to the end? I could have sworn I clicked to jump to the end. That just keeps happening to me. I don't know if I clicked too quick on something, but I am constantly not getting my first keyframe and I override the first one. But anyway, this should now be essentially properly sticking, or it's all animated and I will actually see it update. The question is there some magical offset position where these two do visually line up and stay all the time? Or is there, I mean, first of all, our entire methodology here could be completely wrong. But I mean, in the animation, it does seem to travel all the way around. And that's what we are doing. And my assumption there is like we're at 0.5 offset, so we're halfway across, but maybe halfway across is not the proper one. It's also like we're not seeing the angle in the same way. Like, what is kind of an equivalent? Like, I feel like it's sort of like that. And let's just eyeball it. So I'm going to move this to, which one am I looking at? I'm looking at, that's the target one. So, but yeah, this doesn't seem wrong. If I were to put that something like right there, it's like, okay, see those two are visually kind of lining up and it kind of seems correct there. If I hit play and they're just staying statically there, like that doesn't feel at all like what we want. They're going to be constantly changing distance. We do get that kind of harsh reversal, but I don't think there is. Yeah, see, there's not really a harsh reversal there, but at the same time, there does seem to be some ease in and ease out with this thing rotating around, like slows down. So that could be countering this speedy part, like when it does that big flip. But yeah, with these traveling different distances, the only other variable we have is how far along we push this. So it's currently 0.5, we say 0.25. So now, like, does that feel more stable? Like, no, because you can see how it keeps on like pushing further through at some points. Like it just barely makes it to the one ring, and then it's not quite going on the other. And I don't know that there is a number here that would work. Especially right there, like it passes through the other one. So, yeah, I just don't have any ideas at this point. We went further with it than I thought we'd be able to. But I just am kind of stumped as to where we could go with this one. I would want to kind of do it legit. But that's as far as I can think to go with this one. It's really neat. And, you know, I will do is, why is there, seems like there's a frame of, oh, well, there's a, in the viewport, frame of lag doesn't refresh all the way when it comes to tracers in R23. But I'm going to save this one. And, well, first of all, it's important to mention that if you are supporting on Patreon, you can get access to all these scene files. I usually post them on the same day or the next day, and you would get those. But as a special rare exception, I'm going to post this scene file to the live channel. So if you are on the Rocket Lasso Slack channel, and let me pop this over here. So if you go to rocketlasso.com and you go to community, then you can join the Slack channel. And if you join the Slack channel in the live channel, I'm going to drop in the scene file. If anybody wants to explore it further and see if they can get something working, then I'd love to see the results. I am not going to address the result in this one, so feel free to post it in there, but I'm not going to pull it up because pulling up people's files when I can't be confident that somebody actually kind of solved it just can be clunky for the stream. But I will click save here, open up the file please, and I'll just drag that straight into the live channel. So you've got it there already. Cool. All right, pretty neat. There could be more to do there, but I don't know. I mean, there's, you know, we could do math to make sure that these are, we could calculate the distance between one and the other and force them to link to each other, and potentially that could be scaling the wheel up and down. I mean, I guess I will continue with that because that's kind of neat. And it's pretty simple to set up because inside this espresso we've already got, I could say, okay, we've got null, well, let's just do A, well, no, I'm sorry, we'll do A and B. So we can take null A, null B, and say, I would like the distance between these. So I would like the global position, and we just feed in two vectors into this distance, and it will give us a set distance out of it. So dragging in the extrude, that's the exact length, although we probably want to do scaling, but just to show you, I can now say I want the object, how do they, I guess it's just offset now, so that's, I just want the offset. It used to be a vector, but now they changed it. So yeah, that should be automatically forcing that to be the proper length now, so no matter what, that should be pretty much perfectly stretching from one side to the other. So kind of no matter where we look, it's like, yeah, that's going to be now the proper length. It's going to be getting shorter and longer, but it could be from this particular point of view that you can't really tell the difference. I don't think that the example actually was faking that, not in the way we are. I just feel like there's some minor mathematical something or other that could be making that better. But yeah, even here you're going to see that this little wheel is going to be escaping and flying out and whatnot. So there's more going on than that, but putting in a little bit of espresso was just a neat little detail. All right, I do want to jump onto a different question. It's pretty cool. Let's see. Dean is seconding somebody else's question. I will take a look at it. Uh-oh. Another Axpom or Entagma thing. So they're always making Houdini videos. We get links from them sometimes, but this is volume stuff, and I don't like the idea of that too much. Well, let's see. This is the specific goal, presumably. They're asking if this could be done in cinema. I mean, this is full on just particle simulation. And you can see there's all sorts of layers of turbulence and whatnot. So this just requires like a big old particle system, which I don't even have X particles here. So there's literally nothing that could be done because you get turbulent flow messing up all of these surfaces. And I'm not seeing, I mean, this could be a solid, I'm presuming there's a solid volume of particles, but you can see as they break apart that the you can start seeing the individual particles. So it's just a, well, not just, I mean, not simple, and there's probably millions of particles here, but the it's some system where you create the entire volume with so many particles, and then you start running the turbulence through it, probably mapping it to a spline or something. We could do it with field flow. You know, we could do like low res versions of this in vanilla cinema. Very, 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 very low res versions of this. Yeah, well, no, just to, you know, why not show you a very, 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 very simplistic version of this? Let's make a mo text, and this is not gonna have a lot of particles, but I'll just make a letter R. Let's grab a nice, I just want a thicker font here. Give it a little bit more thickness in that orient. I guess we don't like too much. Let's do 30, split the difference. All right, so you do that, and then I don't know how many we'll be able to create. And I always question how many we can fit in here. To keep it running relatively quicker, I'll make it a cube. And I would like a grid of, let's say, 10 by 10 by 10. T for scale. Oh, 10 might be a little small. Oh, not if I'm scaling the cloner. Excuse me. Scale the cube. There we go. That's more what I was expecting. So you can see I've got individual little cubes there, but the resolution here isn't absurd. So scooting this letter R forward, we can now see we should encapsulate this pretty well. So I don't need any more on the Z. And now say, okay, I would like more. Vertically speaking, like that, and then we'll center this and do two more on X. So that should be enough to fill up the entire letter with a terribly low resolution. We could easily double this, but in this case, I think actually we can change the form to be set to object, and the object will be this letter. And does that work? No, it doesn't seem to like it. However, let's try putting connect object just to tell it to be geometry. Let's see if it can acknowledge that. Hey, yeah, I can. Okay, so now you see that it's only generating this where things were inside of that volume. So we do have the option, and this is very low, so we can probably increase the res a bit. So I'll say 7 by 7 by 7. I'm not going to double it because it's going to be cubed, whatever we do. But now that's too big, so T for scale. And put a few extra copies. Okay, so that's as far as I'll go on that. As far as resolution is concerned, oh, that's interesting. Oh, that was weird. Anyway, now you see that I've got a volume of cubes, but now you imagine that you would be making this a giant volume of particles, and then I'll make this dynamic simulation, rigid body. Now they are dynamic, and I can tell them to calculate as cubes, as boxes, which should be pretty quick. Spheres are even quicker, but I don't know. I don't know what the count is going to do to us here. So let's give it a quick look here. Volume of cubes. Turn off gravity, Control D, dynamics. And say gravity equals 0. So if I hit play, let's see what kind of frame rate we get. Once they start moving, it'll probably go slower, but we're in the reasonable-ish range. I'm going to tell the dynamics not to fall asleep. Dynamics, don't sleep. Now let's see what it is. Yeah, that's still not horrible. Okay, so volume. Before we get there, let's make a spline. Pen tool. And let's start here. And go up to there. Curve around, curve around, curve around, and end. Actually, it's probably a good idea to overshoot those things, so I'll do an extra one there. Hit escape, click that, and then also extend this one down. Okay. Excellent. So now we need a volume, or what do we need? We need a simulate force, field force. And I usually crank this up to 55 because that is guaranteed going to show us things. Right now, nothing will be happening. But let's try adding just, I'm going to try throwing in just a random and hitting play and see what our frame rate is like. I'll hit save just in case. Hit play. Yeah, still not unreasonable. And, you know, we're down at 7, but that's about what I was expecting. I'm actually surprised how many of these are not traveling too much, but we'll deal with that in a moment. So this random field, that's not actually what I, well, actually, you know what? I'm not, now that I think about it, we do want this random field. I want a random field, but I would like more resolution. So let me get a cross section, please. So we got, what's our world axis? Z. Okay, I want no Z. X, Y, Z, no Z. Makes it flat, give me full resolution here, and that's going to be our turbulence scale. This is already based on a noise. I would like to crank this noise up so you can see we get a little bit more uniformity. But along those lines, I want a decent amount of speed. Let's turn off the cloner for a moment. So you can just see there's going to be kind of slowly changing. But I don't want those to be everywhere all the time. I want them to only be in some places. Also, let's make it so we can actually see this all the way through the letter R. I would like to also, in the field force, limit the object to the spline. So if I make a spline, you can now see that the spline is doing something. I would like to limit it, I suppose. Let's limit it to along and radius. I typically don't use along and radius, but I think in this case it's not necessarily a bad idea. So you can kind of see it appearing right around there. I don't want direction from it. So this requires a mask. We're masking out where it gets applied. I'm going to say I want to mask it out only to where this is. And let's see if the along makes sense. I think we might need to separate this out to, because you just get both sets of controls, but the radius seems to be implying it escapes. So yeah, I'm going to make 2 different ones. Let's keep it straightforward. Let's say that this spline mask is just set to radius. And we'll create the proper, maybe it was fine, but I will separate these out. Conceptually, I just like them being separate. So you can see this is going to be the radius that it's even allowed to do any effect. And then I'll make a duplicate of that spline, holding on control. This one is radius. And this one is along. Now this one, I'll say along. Now you see the along, this is completely ignoring the one below, and you can see that this does very different looking things. But if we say multiply, then now it's only where the 2 of them combine. And if I erase out a bunch of this, yeah, so you see I'm erasing out a bunch of it. I should now be able to use the offset to grow it. Yeah, that's exactly what I want. If we want that to go the other direction, which is sort of what I was intending, we could reverse the spline several ways, but let's just actually reverse the spline. So I'll say point over, or right click, point order, reverse sequence, and now you see it goes the other direction. Now inside of the field, I would like this along to offset from nothing. Let's do this. I'm carefully looking at this keyframing thing there, and now I'm going to fast forward. Maybe I've been clicking this button, but that's jump to next keyframe. Or now let's go to end. That's go to next key. That's probably what I've been doing. So there's a keyframe here, but I've been clicking go to next keyframe, but there's no next keyframe, and then I override the first one. But I need to click to end. Okay. Excuse me. Okay, now we scale that all the way up, so it's affecting everything. It's over the course of 90 frames. We probably want more time. But let's just take a look at that. Okay. And now let's turn back on this. Now imagine, oh, that seemingly got way offset somehow. That's weird. Did I accidentally move the object? Oh, it's still zeroed out. I somehow moved the spline way down. Go figure. I'm just going to move the spline up. Oh, no. That's not wrong. I forgot that I extended the lines at the beginning, so it's just visually throwing me off. Sorry about that. Anyway, hit play, and now these should start traveling upward. We won't see it right away because that's actually the start point. Now we can actually see that travel up. And as soon as it enters this area, then that will begin calculating. So since we know that is working, although I would like this to be getting applied earlier. So let's push that up to the start point a little bit quicker. Go to the end. And the end can be a little bit earlier. Okay. Now, I do not need this to display. And now we should just see these boxes start getting affected pretty much right away. Seems to take a little bit of time for any force to get applied. But you can see this starts drifting in. This is just applying a big old random noise. Like I said, that other thing was clearly showing signs of turbulence being a thing. But this can expand and solely affect every individual component of that. And yeah, I guess that's pretty much the meat of what I wanted to talk about there. But you already see that, you know, because we are generating cubes and we can, I'm going to tell them to be spheres, which will marginally increase our speed. Can't really detect the speed. Maybe it is a little smoother, but yeah, you can see how that's traveling through. We could increase the turbulence, have it apply everywhere. This could also, there's so many ways we could apply different things. We could build an attractor on here so they're still wanting to stay together. But you can imagine if we had 100 times as many particles and they were 100 times smaller, that the resolution would start getting pretty good. And I think that's pretty much what we're seeing, but they're using a proper particle simulation. A volume of cubes. Boop. Let's see. We've still got 45 minutes. What do we got? Seeing if YouTube has any typed out questions. Raza12 is asking about any smart way to create a procedural condensation that could be animated on a flat surface or something like a glass bottle. That's an interesting question. Once again, if you're going to do pseudo-proper condensation, I would immediately go to a full-on simulation. But it's super tricky because, I mean, in reality, it is just a full-on fluid sim is what really is happening. But is there a reasonable rig we could make? I mean, there's lots of ways I can think to fake it. I'm just trying to think of a cool way. And then the rig, any rig we do is going to, you'd need continuous generation of additional ones. But, and then, oh yeah, if we're going to run any smart simulation on here, you need to make it editable. Probably. Maybe not. Okay, I have a direction I want to pursue. So, okay, let's view this from the side view. And I'll make a bottle, something simple. Just sort of like an old school glass milk jug. It's kind of what's in my head. Something a little bit like that. And it'd be kind of fun to make this like four-sided. Rounded but four-sided. Let's see if we can get that to work all right. So a loft. No, not a loft. A rarely used lathe. So we'll lathe it. And I only want 4 subdivisions. Thank you very much. From the side view, I want the hole a little bit larger. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll do that. I guess it turns around at the top, but whatever. We're going to make this thing square for fun. Now we get that shape. I want this to be... we do natural. We do uniform, which will make it very even, which is in general a good idea. And then I plan on subdividing it. So that's probably fine. And then I'll take a bevel deformer and then run that after the fact. It's limited to things that are pretty sharp. So then increasing this offset should give us these nice angles. And as long as it doesn't explode on the bottom, which it's sort of doing something weird right there. It's probably just pushing too far. Yeah, that pushes a little too far. So we have to stop before that or change our point count. Or we can turn on limits, but I'll just stop a little bit early. So we'll do something like that. And then the entire thing gets put into a subdivision surface. Now you get kind of this rounded square bottle, which is pretty much what I was going for. And if we are so inclined, you could easily get the thickness through putting it into a cloth surface. And no subdivisions, and give it a couple units of thickness on there. Actually, I don't know for sure, but something I think that is a inherent problem on the cloth surface. No, that's correct. I thought sometimes it inverts the wall badly, but that did a fine job. So yeah, we could do that. We want condensation, so it's really only on the outside. So for the rig, especially if we want things to run a little bit quicker, I think we should limit it to where it can appear. We may be able to do that with a selection tag. So I'm going to put this into a null, Alt-G. We'll name this bottle. Save it. Come on, keyboard. Save. Bottle. And I'm going to add a recall tag. This is just so I can make this editable. This recall is a plugin that we make at Rocket Lasso, but that's just going to allow me to create this tag, double click, and I can store all this information. So if I need to go back to the step, I can bring it back. But it just makes it so I can make this editable and then not worry about it. And I could delete this and delete all these selection tags. And for anybody who doesn't know, I can now double click recall and it's going to bring that back again, which is what that does. But now I've got this bottle and I'm confident to be able to jump back to that earlier model if I need to. Now, making a selection, I want condensation to happen everywhere between, let's just even cut out a little bit of the bottom. UF, fill the selection, and now that is my selection. Set selection tag. Don't use fields, and we'll just call this bottle. So I have a selection tag named bottle, and okay. Let's see if we can get this to work. I shall make a cloner, and the cloner, let's do it the simplest possible. There's gonna be a bunch of steps to this, but let's see what we got. I'm gonna try and make it parametric as much as possible. So a sphere, we can make this pretty low poly, not that low poly. That is pretty good though. T for scale. I want these to be small, but large enough we can see them. Clone onto an object. The object will be the bottle. Limit to bottle selection. Let me make as many as few as we want. I believe my plan is going to be to slowly increase the count. So we start out with a few and then record, and we're probably going to need a lot of frames on this one. Let's jump it up to 333. And yeah, we'll go all the way to 333 and then let's go up to 300. So this is just going to slowly create additional drops. All right. These become dynamic. Simulation. Rigid body. Also, I want the bottle to be dynamic. We might need to push those off from the surface. That's fine. We'll do that in a little bit. But the bottle will also be dynamic. Simulation, collider body, static mesh. Yeah, it's in R23 they made 22 or 23. They made the tags a lot smarter, so they jumped to the correct mode, so you actually know what's going on. Now, if I play right now, they're just going to fall and explode away from the bottle. We can see them pretty well, so I will shrink them more. But ultimately, we need these not to be directly colliding with the bottle. So I'm going to tell them to transform and push away on Z. And you can see I'll scoot them away. They're not actually intersecting anymore. At least I hope they're not. And now if I hit play, they should hopefully just kind of fall down. It looks like they're slightly intersecting. Yeah, now they do fall straight down. All right. Control D. We'll turn off gravity for now. Okay. Here's the thought. And I don't know if this will work. I would like to create a selection tag. A Mograph. Let's do a weight map. Yeah, we'll make a Mograph weight map. And here's going to be the first kind of test and or limitation. Currently, these all have a weight of nothing. They're all a weight of 0. Oh, and that tag should probably be on the cloner. So now you can see that here's, you see a red dot on everything. What I want is them to slowly, constantly gain more power. So, and with no gravity, these should just sit there. I guess they're slightly drifting away, possibly from minute intersection, possibly because we have a margin. Control D, expert, collision margin 1. I'll say 0.1. There we go. Now it's not, it doesn't have an invisible force field, or it's a very thin invisible force field. Okay, so I would like this to constantly gain some power. What's the rig for this? We somewhat got stumped on this somewhat recently. One, we definitely need a freeze. We need freeze to be set to add. And we don't grow. Possibly we average. I don't want to average, but maybe it is average. Freeze, average. Let's say max. That's dangerous, but let's see what happens. Don't worry about your radius. I'll do a small radius just in case. Effect strength. Yeah, that's fine. If I hit play, nothing should really happen. If I create a solid, then everything gets full power. If I put this down at normal, but I give it a value of 5, does anything interesting happen? Let's give it a stronger value. Okay, well, you're seeing that it's turning like 50%. It's turning this light orange, which is fine. It's not what we need, though. How do I make this do a feedback loop? Can we move it above? Can I add that? Oh, dang it. I need this. There is a way of doing this, and it's just not immediately coming to me. What was the process? Thank you all for all the nice comments, everybody, by the way. How do I get this to do my feedback loop? Add. I mean, there might be a thing where you need to feed into a second tag. But I just want this to slowly power up. Maybe it needs the original one and then the second one. Possibly. And full power, but leave it weak. Dang it. Put this one down to nothing. Put that one up to something mild. Think. I think I even did a practice run of trying to get this rig to run recently. Now it's not coming to me. Merely by existing, I want this to begin to add always. I don't like max. Let's put that on none. Auto update, please. Ooh, okay. Hey, look. Something happened. So let's go back. Okay. This add on top of it, do you see how it suddenly brightened up? So I put this on none and auto update, and now it did seem to actually brighten up. Now, let's slow it down by lowering this value. Now it should take 3 times as long to get there. Yep, slows down. Let's do 1%. And now you see it slowly gets brighter. Now, we need to see if when a new one gets created. Yes! Okay, you see when a new one gets created that it's starting its own kind of individual journey. It is like when a new one gets created, it's very low power and then starts gaining. That's exactly what we needed it to do. Okay, so we need a freeze. I don't know if we need this solid under here. There's a good chance we do. If I hit play, does this still work? Okay, we didn't need that one. So this is a freeze set to normal, and then we can have that other one set to add, and it's constantly slowly adding to the value, and it remembers it. Exactly what we wanted. Okay, cool. So now that we have that, give it a save. So I need these to suddenly become dynamic at a certain point. Or, yeah, let's just make them, the simple version will be to make them dynamic at a certain point. Dynamics cannot see Mograph weight tags, but they can see Mograph selection tags. So if I take a Mograph selection tag and say, okay, Mograph selection tag, you're going to use fields, and you're going to be looking at this weight tag. And once this weight tag becomes, let's say, 90% turned on, or you can even say 99% turned on, suddenly it's going to be considered selected. So I've got this Mograph selection tag, and if I hit play, well, maybe I need that to be 1%. Yes, okay. So now, yeah, I had to do the opposite. So we need the tolerance to be 1%, so it has to be really, really close to that value. So you'll see that this is going to be gray, it's going to be brown, and if I play, it waits and it waits and it waits and it waits, and then suddenly, bink, it turns on. That moment that turns on is because this tag has gotten up to its full brightness. Okay, cool. So I don't know why that just turned red. Let's see if it's still working. I don't know why it's turned red here, but it's still working, so let's just keep an eye on that. Okay, suddenly there's a selection. All right, to start out with, why don't we just turn our gravity back on to default, and then in the dynamics tag, I'll say that you are... Where's our... Where's the clear? Where's the tabs to drop them in? Trigger immediately, trigger on collision. What? Am I missing something? I'm going to open up an older version of Cinema just for a quick check. Simulation, rigid body. Oh, wait, I know what the problem is. This dynamics tag, this only works if I drag it onto the overall cloner. So let's make sure that this, and as soon as I do that, now you see the Mograph selection tags are there. I was like, where did those settings go? I thought maybe they changed it between versions of Cinema. But if I hit play right now, nothing's in there, and they should just fall. Everything's going to fall. But now, if I say, actually, you're based on being dynamic, you are dynamic based on if the selection tag is there, then let's see what happens now. I hit play, and they all just sit there. And then hopefully at a certain point, yep, there we go. So now at a certain moment, they begin to drip off, and that's entirely based on how long they've been existing. So this is already working quite nicely. So now that we've got that, I didn't want to use just overall gravity, although we could. We'll do 0. And a couple things we need to do. We need a field force. So Mograph, no, simulation forces, field force. And I would like to use this overall surface to generate a gravity, but it is pretty high poly. We could simplify it quite a bit. Let me make a duplicate of that geometry, not to be dynamic, and I'm just going to delete every single polygon we don't need, so I'm going to delete all of those, and now we're just left with this surface. And we could definitely simplify, so I could do like some loops, and every single point, every single polygon that we get rid of will speed it up, and in theory you could get rid of like every other one of these. I'm not going to do all that, obviously, but I'll just dissolve the ones I happen to already select, and... yeah, okay, did get rid of all those points. Anyway, this will be our field force reference. Hide that one. Don't need the selection tag. That's just eating up scene file space. Anyway, with this field force, which I shall move up into the air so we can see it up here where we're testing, I would like to have this do several things. First of all, let's just do the gravity. So I'm going to create a solid, and currently this is all pushing, I think, up, but if I want gravity, I can say -1. So now it's -1 with, -1 means full negative power of whatever the strength is. So if I hit play, then currently there is a small negative gravity in the entire scene, and it should slowly move that down. It's perfectly fine. All right, let's slow them down a lot. I really, really want these to be slow. So how about doing a no bounce, maybe friction, maybe not. But what I really want is a bunch of probably linear damping and angular damping. Why not? Hit play and let's see how much power that seems to have. Some. Actually, you see it does slow it down quite a bit. Potentially we could... apparently scrolling the camera is a bad idea. I'm not sure why it doesn't like that, but you can now see that that's going to start slowly drifting down. Now, even though we're draining the energy out, dang it, I don't like the camera's not working. But you see it will kind of be rolling down the surface. But in theory, I'm trying to get an angle where you can see it, but in theory this could still shoot off of the surface a bit. Let's just leave that running. Even 300 frames is nowhere near enough. So anyway, you now see the point. Those are slowly dripping down. And now that they're dripping down, I could, in the field force, I want the bottle reference to also be a variable. So if I pull this up, I would like this to view the surface, and the surface actually gives us a surface direction. So I could increase this radius a whole bunch. In fact, there's no reason not to go like really big. So I'll add an extra 0 on there. And now there's just a really, really, really strong force everywhere that I believe is pulling it towards the bottle. Let's rewind. Oh no, actually you see right now it's pushing it away. So I don't want to push away, I want to push towards the bottle. And then, actually, no, not change the radius, I want to change the direction and invert the direction. So now it should be attracting it towards the bottle's surface. Now these two forces get added together. So as soon as this drip becomes active, then it should be getting struck towards the bottle and have some downward gravity. These are now two separate variables. This is now gravity. This is now getting attracted to the bottle. Not a terrible idea to, potentially link those together. So yeah, now those will roll down the surface, and we can't spend forever on this. But let's go and give ourselves some extra frames. There's a lot of drips happening, so I think I'll slow down my cloner by just taking this point and saying, okay, I'll keep doing it, but I'm gonna move it towards the end. So fewer drips will be appearing. And then, yeah, these will slowly become dynamic and start traveling down. Now that those are becoming dynamic, those could get, let's put this into a volume builder. So make a volume builder. Feed this. Actually, let's not do well, we will use a volume builder, but before that, how about we put a tracer on there? I think that'll work pretty well. So trace those objects, please, not the vertices. And the hope being, now as this starts rolling down, you see it leaves a line behind. And what's kind of neat is what is that doing? Trace paths of the cloner. Don't connect vertices. Trace active. That's an odd thing that the tracer is doing right now. Let's just rewind and hit play. Maybe I was already partway in, I confused it. I'm not encouraged. What is the tracer doing? That is not proper behavior from the tracer. It should just be drawing a trail. What are we got going on here? The changing of the count could possibly be confusing the cloner. If that's the case, that'd be bad. I can't even think of any way to fix that except I'm just going to try making the tracer again. Don't trace the vertices. Let's just see. No, it's doing that. And it could be because the point count is changing. I want to experiment if it is the point count changing. So I'll crank this up to be higher, turn off the keyframe, hit play, and let's see if it behaves itself. Yeah, you see it's behaving itself. It's because the point count's changing. Like I said, cinema does not like point counts changing. I didn't think it'd be a problem because we're increasing point counts. Somebody's saying there's a handle cloner. Oh, nodes only. I mean, I'll try immediate clones. I don't think that's going to change anything here. Oh, I also have to hit undo, get my keyframes back. Tracer. And you're saying immediate clones, but I don't think it's going to change anything. That's not what this problem is. Trace active, drops, sample step, active. Yeah, you see, it's the index count is breaking it. And clones of clones, like these are not variables. Sadly, they're not variables for what we have here. But yeah, the cloner, it's going up in power. If they were disappearing, I'd be more understanding, but this should not be doing this as the cloner count increases. I'm trying to think of a way around it. We need them potentially all to exist all the time. And I agree, David. It does give the illusion that it's trying to like close the spline over and over again, but it almost needs to be generating a completely new one. It's generating a new like start to end every single frame, which seems, in my estimation, it's happening because we're changing point counts. As this count changes, it doesn't like that. We could have every single one of these already existing in the beginning and then slowly activate them via some other mechanism. So let's see if we could. I'm going to go to the end. So we end up with 300, which isn't that many. Now at the beginning, they all are here. And if I hit play, they're all going to end at the exact same time. But if we go back to our original weighting, we got this solid that's adding more and more power. But if we add a mask to said solid, and then inside of there, do a random field as a mask, and then this doesn't even have to be noise. I'll just set it to random, which is the quickest to calculate. And now it's going to be applying a big old multiplier on all of those, which should make them be spread out in time. We might need to remap it to slow it down a bunch, but let's see what this does. But this could be making some of them, you know, take near, well, I guess, it's random. So it should be anywhere from 0 to 1. So it could work. Let's see, hit play. And we just have to wait to see. Yeah, it's okay. So we see one of them start rolling. That one is rolling. And yeah, they're all going to individually start randomly rolling. It could take some of them a long time, some of them short. The point being is they all exist all the time, which I wish we didn't have to do it that way, but you know, it's working. One of the bigger points here is we can spread those out too more if we need to. Field force, I don't need to see it or calculate. I'm going to turn off the display box because that is technically this is every single one of these little dots is another calculation in that field, and it's going to be slowing everything down. So let's turn that off. I'll save it as another version. Okay, now we have a tracer that should be tracing these, and hopefully kind of only tracing them when they reach a certain length, but we'll just have to find out. Anyway, how about putting this tracer into a volume builder, volume mesher, volume builder. Let's see this as a radius of 1, density of 1, voxel size of 1. So we're getting that. It's a little far from the surface, but we can do things to deal with that. Radius of 2, why not? And then this can taper down, let's say per segment, taper down. Yeah, so those can go straight down just a little bit. And I would like those close to the surface, so the individual spheres, T for scale, make them pretty tiny. And that should make them ultimately get closer to the surface. Even they're not dynamic right away, so good idea to grab the cloner at the very beginning and also make sure that they are offset very, very little. Now we're not, ultimately I don't think we're going to see that drop. Potentially we could if we wanted to, but it's really these trails that we care about. So there we go. Drip. And okay, so those tracers are now creating a trail behind them. Let's hide the drip. Now here's a slight problem potentially. As you see that we see those original drops. And that's because the tracer is constantly creating a, there's constantly a point there on the tracer, and there's nothing we can do to really limit the length of that. For the most part, I'm just going to ignore that. But let's tell the tracer itself to, I always do this wrong, but let's do from end, and let's say that it should be, what, let's say 20 frames long. hit play. Let's see. Hey, I guessed correctly. So now you see there's a trail. Let's make it 45 long. So yeah, now we can get them traveling a little bit longer. And now it drips down. And yeah, now we get these little individual drips that have actual geometry traveling down on the surface. We could do different scales. I'm trying to think if there's any way. I mean, there's no way right now in the tracer to do varying lengths on them. So it's kind of like, you know, it's a set length. It's a little disappointing, but we could make that any set length that we want as those drips go down. Now, you know, a bunch of them are going to wait for a really long time before they go. I'm trying to think of the tracer's always existing until it moves. Yeah. Farm Boy, thank you very much. Yeah, Vitas, I agree. One of my thoughts had been to possibly scale up these to suddenly exist at a certain point, but that ended up not needing to be a variable because we're never seeing the spheres. We're only seeing the tracer tracing behind the spheres. I wonder, this is kind of, no, that doesn't make sense. I was going to say, well, I mean, potentially we could do it. These drips already being there, we could potentially subtract them out, which would be possibly a little bit silly. It might make a hollow point, but if I say, if we fed in, that's in the tracer, but if we fed the cloner also into here and subtract it, so if I say subtract that, then you see it's actually going to take a bite out of it. And I could say mesh points, optimize and close holes. It's seeing the overall volume. I really just want the radius there. If I make a folder and put that inside the folder, and then say subtract, and then inside here make a dilate and erode, then yeah, I can scale those up. Not too far, just a little bit. Then potentially that could be erasing out, but I feel like I erased out some of them, but why are we not erasing out all of them? But that's going to be erasing out the head of it all the time. And then if this is like pretty big, then why are all of those not getting erased out? And that is the tracer. Anyway, that's a thing that can be done. It's going to slow everything down though, so I'm going to not worry about that right now. I would like to get rid of those. I mean, there are possibilities. Like it's seeing, if there's no length. If we made essentially if we shrink everything enough, then it might obliterate those. If we dilate and erode everything, not, well, even smooth, but smooth is slow. Let's do dilate and erode. And what if I say -1? Then now erases kind of everything out. And if we make these lines thick enough, like a radius of 3, we gotta be careful. There's gonna be a happy in between 2.5. Then you see these start kind of getting skinny enough to exist here. But we gotta be careful because there will be a point where they are large enough to exist in both places. But this is currently sort of a happy medium, and those can be dripping down kind of as they exist. I mean, I kind of don't mind the drip existing. I just don't want it there all the time. Once you make the droplets like this, then I love putting in the smoothing deformer. So I can smooth that entire thing out. It's going to make it a lot skinnier. Potentially, we would want these radiuses to be larger so that they can get smoothed out after the fact. As depending on how far we allow those, I could really... Actually, I'm surprised I can pinch that down pretty far. So that's not bad. Yeah, so those are dripping down. Not too bad there. There's a little bit of uniformity to the entire thing, but we have a lot of controls here to play with. This field force, we can make the entire thing travel down faster. Let's double the speed downward. So those want to drip down a little bit faster. We could put some randomness here in the downward motion so that they travel at slightly different speeds. In addition to that, we don't have enough drips, but it would be pretty easy to, inside of the weight, this freeze is currently traveling down, but potentially we could layer up another freeze. So if one drop happened to hit a drop below it, that it would like it would instantly activate that lower drop. It wouldn't instantly like, you know, they'd still just be individual blobs that happen to be traveling near each other. But that'd be a thing. Oh yeah, with what I just changed there, yeah. So that is erasing out the drops until they begin. Yeah, it sticks to the surface really well. It does randomly generate them. It's working reasonably well for kind of what had popped in my head. And it's all vanilla cinema. Any additional thoughts on this? I would like to try and tackle one more short question. Wouldn't a volume builder connect to them nicely? Yeah, I think the vanilla, the volume builder will connect to them nicely, and you can just see, let's see, well, I'm trying to see if any of them, well, yeah, you see these two, like these just happen to bounce into each other. The point being is that they don't have any effect on each other. These are not going to blob in and try and properly follow in the trail. And every single one of them gets their own trail. I wish we could tell them to calculate segments individually. Oh, that'd be great. That'd be cool. I have a suggestion to make the max on. Because, yeah, it'd be cool if we told them to get attracted to the individual spline so it actually would get, like, pulled into it and then travel along with it. But right now, they kind of create their own trail that they would get attracted into. So it kind of nullifies it. Can we make a separate tracer? No, I can't think of a way to do it. But yeah, you know, they will blob into each other, but there's not, it'd be really cool if they got attracted to each other. And right now, I cannot think of a way that we could do that. But no, look at this thing sweat. Yeah, and the speed would be really good, because you know how the drops, when something's sweating, like it'll kind of go like quickly and then slow down, and quickly and slow down. It'd be kind of neat to do that. So that'll be the last little element to this. If anybody has any simple questions, we might be able to add on to that. But this is all just about the field force. So this is pulling down. So this is how much it's pulling down. If I say, let's put a mask on the pull downness, then make a random, then let's say random noise field. I would like to visualize the random noise field. I don't know how big that is. Oops, I should have zeroed this out before I drag that up. Okay, so look, you can see the bottle kind of in the outline, but I would like to please see this random field. Yeah, I just want to see the scale of it. We can give it a bunch of verticality. So yeah, stretching up quite a bit there. Give it some speed, not too much speed. And yeah, that seems all right. I'm not entirely sure what that will do, but let's drop that in this mask. And see what we get. I'll turn off the volume because we don't need to see the volume to test this. Seems pretty uniform. But noises are... Let me make sure I put it in the right spot. Yep, turn that on. I was like, there's gotta be something wrong until I turn on this little wiggle. It's not actually applying. I was like, we should be seeing some difference, even if it's relatively mild. So these are going to now drip down. But yeah, okay, I definitely start seeing some slowdown. But this random field is applying a very gray type of noise onto it. So if I put a curve above it, we can remap the noise being fed in. I can say, actually, if you are in this lower range of noise, in fact, let's go really extreme. Now, most of the time, there is not enough random noise to do anything, because only if you're in this upper range of noise does it do anything. Now, obviously, that's way too much. So we'll pull that back to something somewhat reasonable, and we'll pull this up as well. So now we're just cranking up the contrast of the noise. So even if something starts dripping, I expect it to slowly travel into certain areas where... yeah, actually, that's working better than I thought it would. So let's turn everything on. So let's see. Yeah, you see it traveling really slow, and I expect it to hit points where it's like, okay, full speed. Yeah, you see, look, this one's like passing that one up. Now, I would like, I mean, keep in mind we're running at 8 frames per second. What I would like is, it's almost like full speed. Like, let's get rid of kind of a lot of these medium speeds. It's kind of like almost all or nothing. And there's a slow animation speed to the overall. You see right here, there's 25% animation speed. So even if something stops, eventually the noise will catch up to it and then speed it up again. And you know what? This general downward motion was never that strong, so we'll start cranking up to be stronger. So let's see. Yeah, a little variation will go a long way in here. Yeah, I like those quicker ones. Slows down. And I suppose with those going quicker, this does not need to trail nearly as long. Let's drop that to 33. Goes nice and quick. You get a long streak if you're moving quickly, but then as you slow down, that tail is going to catch up with you. There we go. That's looking a lot better already. Like, there's just so much more life in it when there's that little bit of extra speed variation. See, I really want more of this type of thing to happen, but it's pretty random. But yeah, not bad. Not bad for a entirely. See, this is rig based. I love building rigs that do this type of thing. We should be able to see a reasonably high number of these if I do a quick save there. Let's do over 1,000. And let's just see the lines. There won't be any volumes, but I just want to see the lines. The original randomness we put on here to slow them down initially is working better than I thought it would. But I thought we were going to have to talk about remapping that. But yeah, we can make more or less, and if these are all happening too quickly, yeah, look at all the variation. I wonder how that looks with the volume. Yeah, then you get these blobbing together. And you can do, you know, a bunch of extra smoothness if you wanted to, and do a lot of drops. Like I said, you could make certain drops appear, but the problem is that they all already exist, and I wouldn't want these constantly erasing everything out. Maybe I'll be able to think of something in the future to stop those from dripping. But yeah, a little bit of a limitation. Could you get them to disappear as they drop? Can you explain in a different way, Mick? Because they are disappearing as they drop. You see that the tails will erase themselves out. And if you just mean when they fall out of the scene, like as they move away from the bottle, you don't want them to show up. Like, we could do that pretty easily. There's several different ways, but this is all just showing up in the volume builder. So my go-to on that would be the simplest, silly way would be just to make a big old subtractor. So I could put that there, and then in volume, drop that here, and say, hey, this will subtract. So now you see it's subtracting them out as they pass through that. A slightly, well, I don't want to say smarter, but a slightly more dynamic way of doing it would be to actually feed the bottle itself in. So, and we can even take the field force version of this. So this could be the outer skin of the bottle. Make a folder, and then put a dilate to thicken this thing up. So let's go and, yeah, now you see that it's created this actual thickness on the bottle. But we don't need to go too far. But we are at a relatively high, let's go 1, maybe. I don't know if that's thick enough. But this, what I could do now is just doing a lot more calculations there. But I could say, I only want to see where those two things intersect each other. But I bet you our frame rate is going to tank from that. Yeah, well, we're down to 2 frames per second, which is significantly less. Let's skip to a future moment. So we'll turn off the volume. Now we're running relatively clean. Start seeing some movement as they all start to grow. And now let's turn it back on again. So now these are only allowed to show up on the very surface of the bottle. And I even made the surface of the bottle very thin. So that's probably even, yeah, you see these are even forcing it to be very thin. Only where those two things meet each other is it even allowed to be there. And that does mean that as these hit the bottom and then they would be dripping off, you'll see that that just terminates there. So now it's kind of dynamically doing the exact same thing that the bottle is, but at the cost of all those extra calculations on the surface. But this extra little flatness that we get on it, it's a pretty neat addition. So I'm not against that. But yeah, like I said, additional cost for them traveling downward. That will wrap that one up. I mean, a neat question. We got to pursue it a little bit further. Probably would have been a good idea for me to apply at least a couple of materials on there so we could have been seeing everything pop a little bit more. I always forget about that. Even if we're going super cartoony on it. But yeah, different speed drips traveling down, entirely rig-based. Yeah, you have no idea how annoyed I am by the... this not being able to animate up the count, because that would kind of mean you could do this forever and keep on generating more and more and more of them. But what you gonna do? Let's see. Dennis. Oh, no. Sorry. Well, first of all, Dennis, you can't post links in YouTube. You have to do that on Twitch. Second of all, we don't have X particles. Third of all, we are at the end of the stream. So definitely come back next week, but I do not have X particles. Let's see. An SDF. Yeah. Flavio is saying that we could use an SDF smooth on to erase them out, which also would work. Linear fields, any kind of fields inside of volumes work, but man, they slow you down a lot. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. Let's see. Anything else? Nope. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Tomorrow we'll... Oh, what's the next guest on the list? Actually, that's a really good point. First of all, everybody can go to rocketlasso.com. And if you go to streaming... Then this is now counting down the next stream. This is just set on a counter right now, but the yeah, we got Nick Denbor. Smearballs is going to be guest next week. I just sent him an email about the details, so I'll be setting all that up. That'll be really cool. And then we've got Rick Barrett after that, and Casey Hupke, and more people after that. So a bunch of people on the list for the upcoming live streams. That should be really, really cool. Looking forward to this. We're already talking, and I keep this in mind when you ask questions next week, but Nick was already saying that we should focus on some character stuff next week, so we can be, and he's like the expert at creating crazy character stuff, like super crazy stuff. He does a bunch of music videos and just cool, wacky things. So looking forward to that. It should be really cool. And as I mentioned, we do have the Rocket Lasso Patreon. This is going to pop up properly. Kind of want to see this as a public page, please. Yeah, so here's the Rocket Lasso Patreon, and I post lots and lots of stuff on here where the replays get posted on here a week early and all the scene files, and there are bonus live streams. There will be a bonus live stream tomorrow where you might be recording a floating balloon tutorial. So that could be cool. I'll just put the links in there if anybody wants to go check stuff out early. In any case, that is going to wrap up today. I'll see everybody in the bonus stream tomorrow. And then there was that new tutorial yesterday. And then the balloon tutorial, which hopefully is something we can figure out. And then actually, I still have to post this on social media, but I'm going to be speaking for Maxon. I'll be presenting at the Maxon live stream in April. So that should be good. In fact, I think I'm the very first presentation after official Maxon notes and announcements. So I'll be the very first one early on in the morning. So everybody should come and hang out in that as well. But in any case, I think that will wrap up today's live stream. Thank you so much for everybody for coming. Make sure you join the Slack channel. So head on over to rocketlasso.com/community. And you can join the Slack channel to get the continuations there. And just keep an eye out. There's lots of cool stuff coming quickly. And I guess I'll see everybody next week. So bye-bye.